KSVY Sonoma.
Welcome to Aspire with Osha, a program about art, nature, and humanity. I'm your host, Osha Hayden. Now here's the question I'll be asking. What is the future you want to create? Stay tuned for some fascinating interviews with my guests who are dedicated to creating a more positive future. In our modern device-driven era, the year of the COVID-19 pandemic, what can we do to connect with each other in more meaningful and positive ways? How can teens who are growing up now find a positive way forward? On today's show, Dr. Mark Schillinger, also known as the Teen Whisperer, will share the strategies he has developed for helping families connect and thrive together. Dr. Mark, founder of Young Men's Ultimate Weekend and Challenging Teenage Sons, is a public speaker, community leader, and a chiropractor specializing in mind-body wellness. An expert in stress management and family dynamics, he's the creator of The Right Way, a method to help families enjoy more caring and cooperative relationships. Mark's wisdom draws upon the sciences of personal growth, neuroscience, mindfulness-based stress management, and tribal ancestral family wisdom. His work with families will be featured this Sunday on the CNN show This Is Life with Lisa Ling, November 29th, 2020. Mark lives and practices in Marin County. Welcome to the show, Mark. So happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here. Anything related to the Bay Area, certainly North Bay, I feel like I'm home. So thank you.
Well, I wanted to start out by talking about how your own teenage years influenced the work that you do now with teens, because I know you have been termed as the Teen Whisperer.
That is true. I have been termed that. And your question is actually very profound. Like, who is I as a teenager and how did that get me here? So let's see how I can kind of get to that in a concise way, but make it as powerful as it really is, which is this. When I was a teenager, I was into three things in New York in the 50s and 60s, actually 60s. I was heavy into music, which I still am. I was heavy into sports, which I still am. And I was really heavy already into exploring alternative lifestyle practices like natural foods and yoga and meditation, things like that. And when I got into college, I was heavy into comparative religion. I had this thing about looking up at the sky and going, okay, if there's a God or whoever, whatever this is, I'm fine. I'm going to come find you. I really want to know what this is. So I had this thing about enlightenment and happiness and how people can get together and cooperate. And I was always sort of that ideal young guy. I was scared crapless of dating. I was mostly an introvert. I just loved to meditate and, ponder. So all the way through college, all the way through my chiropractic college, all the way through my whole life, really up until this moment, personal growth and spiritual development are really, really important to me. And so the way that relates to how I got to be the Teen Whisperer is this. When I finished college, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to be teaching people how to be enlightened, how to be happy, healthy. Early on in my pursuit of that, I realized, oh my God, there's so many different ways to be enlightened. Like there's no one right way. So that was a major insight for me in my early 20s. Like I need to first create a way that's right for me. And then if I'm going to help others, I have to help find a way that's right for them. It's not going to be my way. So that was my pursuit in my early years, my early 20s. Like, how am I going to come up with a way that can be right for everybody, even though it doesn't have to be true for all of them, right?
Right.
Right? So the right way basically is 5 virtues: respect, intelligence, grace, humor, and true, not truth, T-R-U-E, true. Because after studying with so many gurus, masters, saints, lamas, shaman, rabbis, you name it, I've been around this block a little bit. I really wanted to narrow it down to what was the core of their teachings. And so I came up with those 5 virtues, and that was 35 years ago. Now I've come up with many, many dozens of practices that allow people to be healthy, happy, and holy in a way that's right for them. But it's based on these 5 virtues. So in my chiropractic office for the last 36 years, I've been a wellness doctor, as you said, specializing in mind, body. Well, a lot of that is that I am a life coach to many, many of my patients, right? They're my students, what I call them. Well, 20 years ago, when my son and my daughter were becoming teenagers, I was struggling. I grew up in a very tiny little apartment in Queens with an apartment building where you can hear everybody sneeze and talk. And I lived in this tiny apartment with my grandmother, who spoke hardly any English, my parents, 2 brothers and a sister, all very loving. And it was all very stressful too. And so that really helped me in my pursuit of not only spiritual enlightenment, but stress management. Right? Because I grew up in a family where there's already like a couple of suicides when I was younger. Depression and anxiety were huge. So I was determined not to take any medicine. I wanted to learn how to master my mind. So the reason why I bring that up is because in my life coaching and in my work as a chiropractor, I specialize in stress management. All these great skills I had went right out the window when it came to parenting my teenage kids. It was just like, I couldn't practice any of that crap. And no, I didn't want to know from it. I just wanted to yell and scream. Didn't go very
No one else has ever had that experience, I'm sure.
I hope so. Because, well, in fact, I know so, because there's thousands of parents who now send their sons to the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend because they're going through the same things.
Right.
So once I realized that I had to own that I was having a hard time raising my children, I really decided to change my life. I knew that I could not get older knowing that I did not give my best to my children and really to my former wife, because I had gone through a tough divorce years earlier. I had turned that divorce around, became great friends with my former wife. And basically what happened is I decided to become an expert in family dynamics. I wanted to change my right way method of personal growth and spiritual development into what's now called the right way method for family unity. And so I started the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend because I decided that rite of passage, the ancestral tradition of rite of passage, was the first step. So I found a mentor. I learned a lot about rite of passage. We did our first rite of passage event in the year 2000 here in Fairfax, in Marin. And without any advertising, all word of mouth, we had 205 young men show up when I was expecting my son Gabe and his 4 friends who would sleep on the couch and the floor in my house, right? I knew those 5 had to be there. I had no idea there's going to be 200 more young men showing up.
Wow.
Right? And after
what a signal.
It was a signal that I was not the only father who was having a hard time. Parents then called me after that week, like, Dr. Mark, what did you do? My son's like making his bed. He's not yelling at me anymore. He's trying to calm his mind when normally he'd be punching a hole in the door. And so that's when I realized, I really wanted to get onto this and create this method. And then 10 years after that, after having thousands of young men successfully go through the program, I felt like I was the teen whisperer. Now, I didn't give myself that name. Parents started calling me that, but it was because my highly trained mentors, mostly from Sonoma and Marin, we really did crack the code. We figured out how to motivate young men, what makes them withdraw, what makes them violent, what makes them angry at their parents. We really figured it out. And so then I realized 10 years in that I had to create a rite of passage for the parents. So this is very groundbreaking. I don't know anybody doing this. I'm sure somebody is somewhere. But so now when the young men are out in the woods going through their rite of passage, and we typically hold these events in Sonoma or Marin, I'm in a hotel with the parents while they're going through a rite of passage with me, learning how to let go of their son as a boy, learning how to communicate to him in a respectful way as if he's an intelligent being, how to use your authority and influence in a really healthy way that appeals to his biological desire to individuate and not a whole lot of psychological overthinking of things. So long story short, here it is 20 years later now, working with young men and parents, and the work has helped so many people here in the North Bay that I've kind of accepted the name Teen Whisperer because I am good working with families and especially young men. So I would sort of end my long-winded answer here by saying my greatest joy now is doing what I call family mentoring. I mentor whole families, children, teens, parents, all using this method. And usually within 6 months to a year, they're all having way more caring and cooperative relationships. They all know how to respect each other's needs. And this can all be done without the parents losing any authority.
That's amazing, actually. I mean, I studied, family
Mm-hmm.
therapies, with my psychology degree, and it's difficult. So kudos.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really,
We have quite a few
really.
therapists who come to the workshops and managers
Yeah.
to learn technology, which is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Lisa Ling
Mm-hmm.
came out and did an interview with
Yeah.
you. You want to talk a little bit about that and what got her interested in the work that you're doing?
Yeah. When I was a teen, really getting into this whole spiritual personal growth thing,
Mm-hmm.
natural foods, meditation, yoga, I really had this, and I'm saying this with goosebumps now, I mean this, I really had this desire. I wanted to do something good in the world. I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to make a difference. And I took this vow with a Buddhist teacher called the Bodhisattva vow, which is essentially a vow that says that I dedicate my enlightenment through helping others become enlightened. So the last, 50 some odd years since I took that vow when I was in my late teens, I've been working on that. Well, a year and a half ago, Lisa Ling, who I didn't know, she called two very good friends of mine that I'm on a men's team with, which is John Gray, who wrote the book Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, and Warren Farrell, who's written many books, including recently a book called The Boy Crisis, which is, in my opinion, the best book ever written about how parents and young men can get along better. And so she actually called them because they kind of co-wrote that book, The Boy Crisis, and wanted to do a story about the kind of problems that, quote unquote, good kids who were challenging were, why they're having such a hard time in the world. So Warren and John said, you should speak to Mark. He's actually in the trenches with these young men. He has a lot of good practical advice. So she called me and her staff did, of course. And so we had amazing conversations, and they said, let's include you in on this show that we want to put together with Warren and one other person, Ashanti Branch, who's in Oakland and a good friend of mine, Warren's, who has a beautiful nonprofit there called Ever Forward Club. And she said, I want to do a show on the three of you. So that was amazing. Now, here is the challenging part. We've never, ever, ever had a woman come to the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend because it's a ton of adult male dudes and a ton of young adult male dudes. And
I can see how that would be, an issue.
it was an issue, not with everybody, but it was like,
Yeah.
Doc, we shouldn't do this. The young men won't be able to be their emotional selves. The men won't want to say stuff that they normally would say to men with a woman around. And basically, it was like, listen, this is an amazing opportunity to get our good work here in the Bay Area, North Bay Area, out into the world. Maybe we can be, like the next big thing in the world. So long story short, everybody agreed. She showed up. She was amazing. I like to say now, telling the story, that there was about 175 males there and one woman, and we were outnumbered. Her presence was so supreme and sublime. She knew exactly how to be. Nobody ever felt like she interrupted. And she also came to the parenting workshop that I was teaching at the hotel nearby. At the end of the event, we do this goosebumpy ceremony where we reunite the parents with their sons. And she came up to me after that ceremony. She said, Mark, I don't know how you do this. I cried 10 times throughout the weekend watching these young men do and say things that they would never do and say with their parents, in any conventional setting, like in traditional therapy. So she really loved it. And now here it is on Thanksgiving weekend, Sunday, November 29th at 10 p.m., her premiere show for this year is actually going to be our show, where she's featuring me and these other two fellows in the Bay Area. So I feel so fulfilled that I am getting a chance to fill my lifelong goal of doing something impactful in a positive way in the world. It's really tear-jerking. It's goosebumpy for me.
I mean, I think through the magnificence of your energy and the purity of it, you've drawn all this to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of inner work. I mean, the little I know about you, I know we're very much similar in our personal growth, spiritual development, always comes out in all the great things I know you've done, like, family work. So the inner work has been the key. Like, I've had to practice and hopefully perfect everything that I teach everybody else to do, right? So I appreciate what you're saying, that it's a manifestation of, my own inner being at this point.
And I love the fact that what you're doing is you're able to accomplish this goal with reuniting families without ever having to have them go to see, like, a quote therapist, which still has, a meaning to so many people's minds of, well, you're going to fix us.
Thank you.
Right? And there's a real difference between supporting the health of someone and fixing them because something's broken. It's a whole paradigm shift there.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. When people ask me, like, what makes our work maybe different from maybe therapy or other, rite of passage, it's essentially this. And by the way, when I say therapy, I only have the highest regard for therapists. Like I said, lots of therapists come to our workshops and study with me. I am saying, though, that in therapy, traditionally young men are not the kind of people you want to sit down and say, okay, open your heart, open your mind, tell me what's troubling you. Young men are usually to sit there and go, these three famous words: I don't know. So I just want to be clear, like, therapy and young men they're usually not a good match. Of course, there's exceptions. So my point is this: unlike therapy or some therapy, and certainly unlike some other programs, we begin the fundamental underlying premise of the whole right way of family unity or personal growth is simply this: no one needs to be fixed. No one needs to be saved. And there is nothing wrong with anybody. That's the premise.
That's perfect.
Are there some exceptions? This is a dual universe. There's always going to be some extreme the other way. But my experience has been, now, after working with so many thousands of young men and parents, very few people have to be fixed. The method focuses on what's right about them, what's right for them. And I'm very good at that as a personal growth life coach. And so the whole weekend is about how do we help them discover a few things, 4 key things. Number 1, who are they authentically? We want them to first discover their own values instead of being bombarded by the rules of their parents and the community. So we accomplish that goal. We want them to discover who they are, right? So we have this saying, authenticity trumps conformity. Like, if you want to get a young man to conform to your rules as a parent or as a teacher, first make sure that they feel recognized for how bright and wonderful they are in their own selves, right? Right? Because if you try to go for conformity over authenticity, then you'll have anarchy. Young men will rebel. They'll act out that anger or that frustration really strong. So in the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend and our work with families, number 1 is discover who you are, authenticity. Number 2, simultaneously, while discovering who you are expected to have what we call reciprocity. You have to give something back to your family in the form of your physical and mental talents and skills, like taking out the garbage. Like, maybe you're really good at math. Maybe you help your mom with the budget. Maybe whatever skills you have, they're not just for you. They're for your family. And you're a teen now, so you have to contribute to the well-being of your family if it's going to thrive. You can't just be taking from them. Now you have to cooperate with them. Number 3, we let the young men know that they have to develop certain virtues that may not be theirs because they have a responsibility to their community to make it safe and prosperous. That's the role, fundamental kind of.
I like role, that.
Right?
I like that a lot.
Right. And then, so we have authenticity, reciprocity with their family, responsibility to their community. And then the 4th one is spirituality. Helping young men discover what they believe to be the nature of reality or the universe or God, whatever they want to call it, in a way that's true for them. Not what their parents say, not what their church or their synagogue says. What's true for you? And we get them on the path, because we use a sweat lodge at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. We get them on a path to really start trusting their intuition about what they think about these things, which are bigger than them. And all that comes from not thinking that they're wrong and need to be fixed. It's about how do we draw out what's really true for them.
You're talking there about that intuition and instincts and basically leading them to trust more, listen more to their own intuition, their own instincts, that inner wisdom that is there.
Absolutely.
And that's powerful.
It's very powerful because,
Mm-hmm.
with all these devices that they're sucking their minds into, they're kind of losing. This is one of my basic premises about when parents say, what's happening to my son? He's a good boy, but, right? And the big but is in part is that they're being dominated and distracted by digital devices.
Mm-hmm.
So they're losing touch with their natural instinct to individuate and go get out of the house and become their own man. They're becoming overwhelmed with mindless, endless entertainment and over-the-top commercial consumerism and all these things that keep them from being in touch with their own intuition and their instincts. So we let them know that there's a way to get in touch with them. We teach them simple mindfulness-based techniques, of course, to relax themselves. So we define the word intelligence, which is part of the right way, model. Intelligence as applying your own intuition and your experience as the source of wisdom. So we're always leading them inward, and simultaneously, we're always letting them know you can't do life alone. You need to ask for help. So yes, you have intuition and instincts, and you have other primates around who want to cooperate with you. You just have to ask them.
So that's where like rope challenges and some of the activities you do come in, right? Where teamwork is necessary.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's a great point. For them to practice cooperating with their parents and their community. The whole weekend is involved in goal setting, right, with others. Definitely team building, leadership skills, learning to think for themselves, problem solving. So yes, they have to cooperate with others. That's a really big part of the weekend. And the whole agenda is designed to help them start developing their prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that helps them with decision making, and not just only coming from, their instincts or their limbic system, their fight or flight system. So one of the things that we do that's very radical at the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend that cannot be done in a talk therapy setting is we have a grieving ceremony for them. And it happens on Saturday night. After they've already been with us for 24 hours, they show up on a Friday night. And by Saturday night, they're really trusting us because they've gone through ropes courses. We have a hip hop studio where they get to make beats. They do drumming circles. They do yoga. They do a lot of things. But the highlight is Saturday night, where they get blindfolded, and all the young men go on a trust walk, and then they have to climb up some steps to get onto a big platform one by one, and then they're told some very special instructions about how they're going to be initiated into being a young man. So we give them the instructions. Now they're blindfolded, right? We tell them these words: grab your balls, lock your knees, fall straight back. And they do a trust fall, and they're caught by 10 or 12 men. And then they have their blindfolds taken off, and they're told to walk alone on this tiki torch lit path through the woods. They come to a big clearing where there's tons of men from the community, not just the volunteers, but lots of men from the community, Sonoma, Marin, come to these events. And so these young men see all these men there. And once all the young men go through this trust fall, then they do this grieving ceremony where one by one, they get a chance to push up against 6 adult men. And those 6 adult men represent all their past pains, hurts, disappointments, and frustrations in life. With the understanding that when they're pushing against those men, it's not a fight. We're not pushing back. Like we'll backpedal if they can push 6 men. But we want them to very physically, like in a gestalt type of experience, scream, cry, whatever they got to do, they got to get it out.
Because it's stuck in the cells of their bodies.
Absolutely.
In some way. And so through physical activity, you're able to release an emotion, something that is stuck, in a way that you certainly can't do it by talking.
Can't do it by talking. And it's a very primal ancestral setting because this is how it used to be done. at least for the men. The grieving had to be quick, had to be deep, and it had to be scarred over. The wound had to be scarred over because we got to get back to the hunt. We got to go protect those women and those children back in that village. So yes, we may have lost somebody who fell over the cliff. We got to grieve and we got to go. So the young men really do this program, it takes about an hour or two, and they get to do it with the men. The adult men do it too, because we have our own stuff we got to let go of. And then at the end, Osha, it's beautiful. It takes about 2-3 hours. It's usually 1 a.m, and they look cleansed. They look happy. They look like they've shed a layer of skin that was just so constricting for them. And then when that event is over, we let them know that you no longer should be blaming your parents or anybody else for your unhappiness. If you want to really be the man you always wanted to be, it's on you. That's what it means to be a man. It's on you. You don't blame anybody. You don't beat people up over your own unhappiness with yourself. You're responsible for moving your life in the right direction. And then the very next thing they do after that grieving is most of them will stay up that night. They're really kind of psyched up. But then they go into a sweat lodge at 6 a.m. And that is very beautiful after they've done this deep cleanse to hear them pray in their own way about what they want for themselves and their parents in the world. And it is tear-jerking to hear these young men who are often seen by their families or certainly their communities as troublemakers or whatever. And please remember, this program is for normal kids. This is not for bad kids that do harm in the world. But they're not always seen by their parents and their communities, the wonderful, loving guys that they are. So in the sweat lodge, they pray, they cry, they sing songs. They get that they have a way now to go check out their intuition by learning how to be quiet.
So they dip deep into their own authenticity and their intuition and their instincts and that place where you can be still and quiet and have the answers arise within you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you can ask other men or your parents for help, and sometimes they'll have nothing. So you have to ask for that which is bigger than you and is already inside of you and includes you. And so you don't have to suffer alone. You can just pray or just put your mind on that which is bigger than you. And just by getting out of your own contractional reaction and expanding into that which is bigger than you and developing a relationship with that, you'll see as the years go by that you'll be able to find answers that nobody can help you with because it's already within you. And yet you have to kind of look up, so to speak, to find out what that which is inside of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, sounds like an incredible program. Now, you usually do this out in nature, like under the stars.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We've,
it's different during COVID. We can talk about that in a minute.
Sure.
But...
Yeah. So up until COVID, most of the Young Men's Ultimate Weekends took place outside of Napa. There's a Girl Scout camp there. We've done some events on some private property just north of the town of Sonoma. Our next live event, God willing, will be in July and August of 2021. And that'll be in Sebastopol. And we have done some events down in the Santa Cruz Mountains where I used to live. So everything is outdoors. And it's very intense for some of these young men because they've never been away from their digital devices for more than maybe a few minutes. And when they show up at that event, the first thing they have to hand over is their digital devices, which really does freak them out. There's no tents. There's no buildings. We sleep outside in a sleeping bag under the stars, which a lot of young men have never done. And there's tons of studies that show that when you get children, especially boys and young men out in nature, they learn so much better because, young men are really good. Males are good at being spatial. They love spatial. They love space. They love room to roam. They like to check things out physically. That's why they don't do well sitting in a classroom very well. You get young men out in nature where they can start running. They can start just moving about freely. It's amazing to see how attentive they are because they're not constricted by being in their bedrooms the whole time. So being out in nature is a huge part of what we do. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think trees have to be a part of that, as I mentioned to you earlier.
Absolutely.
You have to climb a tree. You just have to get up in a tree and climb it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what I find also is that one of the secrets to the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, and I say this proudly as a North Bay guy, most of our volunteers are from Sonoma Marin. Most, not all, of course. Some are from South Bay, of course, and great guys. But these are men who've gone through their own adult male rite of passage initiations. Okay, there's lots of organizations out there that do rite of passage for adult men, right? So these young men are being led by adult men who have the endurance, because it takes a lot to what we call run with the bulls. These young men, they have a ton of testosterone, trust me. So having initiated adult men who have the endurance, the desire, the ability to fulfill what we call their obligation to initiate the younger generation, that's a very impressive thing for 40 to 80 young men to see, that all these men know how to cooperate with a no problem attitude. They have tons of fun while they're getting stuff done, but we model for them how men can do things without having to fight or argue. And that's a big part of the initiation, that they're around adult men who know how to get things done.
We were just talking about the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend and being in the outdoors, and the adult men who are also trained and have gone through their own rites of passage in order to work with and mentor these young men and initiate them into their manhood from their boyhood.
Yes, and one of the things I want to say too is that when we started the program, I was talking about how I was having a hard time raising my own son, Gabe, right? And all the while I was raising him after the first Young Men's Ultimate Weekend to this current day. He's now 37. He was 16, I think, when he went to the first weekend. Many of those same men, who are also my close friends, they still mentor my son, Gabe. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Right? So if I can't help him with some issue about real estate when he was looking to buy his condo, or, financial stuff, I'm not a good investor. I'm not a money guy. I'm not a businessman. So I have so many friends that I can send him to, or when he has questions about this or that, I have a whole pool of resources where I don't have to raise him. My community is still raising my son with me, just like other men will call on me and say, hey, doc, my son, blah, 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 or my daughter, this and this, what do you think? So this is how communities should be operating, right? Like back in the day, the ancestral model, when we were hunters and gatherers, we were egalitarian. Families had to share, especially if they were nomadic, because you couldn't have a lot of things. So everybody required everybody else to be at their best and share everything, so everybody could survive and ideally thrive. So here I am now with my son, Gabe, who's 37. When we started the Young Men's Weekend, I didn't even barely know how to speak to him without him just kind of tuning me out, even though I loved him more than anything in the world. So now that weekend, that first weekend 20 years ago, not only to begin us on the steps, to climb to having a great relationship, but it also turned my relationship around with my former wife, Suzanne, because I realized that I had to take responsibility for my partner fighting. We remembered that one of the reasons we fell in love was because we support each other in our personal growth and spiritual development. And then we decided that our children were way more important than any differences we had. And so that combination of having a community of men raise Gabe and having Suzanne and I united in this bigger purpose of raising my daughter Becca and my son Gabe so that they could have happy and fulfilled lives like we were pursuing, that turned everything around. That combination of my relationship with Suzanne, my former wife, and having all these mentors in Gabe's life, it has been a breeze, so much so to the point now where when Gabe was 17 or 18 or 19, he went to college for 1 year. He dropped out and said, Dad, I want to get into the music business, because I was a musician. I'm a musician. And I was like, oh, I'm scared. I'm freaked out. It's hard to make money in the music business. And yet I wanted to enforce my model, which is I wanted to sort of support him in his authenticity. So now here we are all these years later. Not only do we own a recording studio together, but he now has been a public speaker in front of thousands of people, this introvert that you would never guess could do this 20 years ago. And he's been in front of thousands of people on stage. He's opened up the stage for Tony Robbins at some events, where he teaches people now how to make hip hop beats, how to produce hip hop artists, and how to make money doing it. He's very successful at it. So I'm very proud of him. And I'm so thankful how our first Young Men's Ultimate Weekend really worked for us. Our relationship is so loving and so cooperative.
So tell me about your daughter. I mean, I know daughters are generally easier than sons, perhaps, but how has all this affected your daughter?
Thank you. Well, as I said early in the show, like I came from a very loving family, and I have two brothers and a sister, and all my nieces and all my nephews are amazing, loving people. The way my parents were, the way my brothers and sister are. I mean, my brothers and sister are responsible for me being on the show with you. You know, we've always shared our love and resources. So my daughter Becca grew up in that kind of environment where everybody loves each other. So my daughter went through a difficult divorce about 6 years ago. She was living in Southern California. So, of course, I invited her to live with me. It is the most loving, supportive, respectful relationship. She has a degree in fine arts. So she works for a company, I think it's called Workshop SF, where people go to learn how to become artists. So she works there and she loves being authentic, which is teaching people how to do paint, how to paint, how to do macrame, how to do all sorts of different things. She's always been supportive of me getting my relationship together with Gabe. And because we lived together, and even when she was a teenager, she always listened to my spiritual and personal growth philosophy. So she has her shit together. When I'm down in the dumps sometimes, she knows how to mentor me in my own method. So
Oh, that's great.
She's a beautiful, wonderful person. And so having her and Suzanne and my son Gabe and myself, we all live within a few minutes of each other. I like to call us the happiest divorced married family. So we're all healthy and happy together, all four of us.
Well, I have another question for you, and that is, what is your own? Because I know you work with a lot of clients in your practice as a chiropractor, and you've been voted best chiropractor in Marin. I should mention. So you're working with them on wellness and stress management and all of these things. And so what kind of a personal routine do you do? How do you manage your own fitness and wellness?
Yeah, thank you. It's certainly when I'm coaching parents, which I do a lot of, one of the main things I work on with them and their sons and daughters is wellness. Because when I teach people how to relax their mind in 15 seconds or less, which I'm a black belt at, I'm really good at. When I teach families how to relax, which I do with my patients as well, when I teach them how to live healthy and positive lives, they have way more desire and ability and energy to help each other have wonderful households. And it's all based on having healthy routines or rituals. Mm-hmm. Which I like to spell RICH, rituals, RICH, rituals. They have to be rich. They have to be meaningful. They have to help you. So in my own life, based on my early teachers, I learned that the way you develop discipline is if you do the same thing at the same time every day. So when I wake up, I have routines for my yoga, for my meditation, for some spiritual reading. When I'm shaving, I listen to my favorite teachers either on a YouTube or on a podcast. Like I'm always filling my mind with positive things. Then before I start the car to come to work, I do a little meditation. I'm talking about 15, 30 seconds. When I get to my office, I have a little routine that I do with my staff where we just kind of do some meditation and check in with each other, how we're doing, how can we support each other. When I'm on my lunch break, I do some more meditation. I do some stretching right here in my office, right on the floor. When I get home before I eat, same thing. I do a very similar 20-minute routine that I do in the morning for stretching, spiritual reading, meditation, just for a minute, but it's 7 days a week. So I've learned when my first teachers told me that over 45 years ago, I wish I could, I do in my prayer, so to speak, but I love to thank them for thank you for turning me on to the need for all humans to have rituals, because I'm super healthy, super happy, super holy in a way that's true for me. And it's because I have great routines day in and day out. And I tell this to parents who are listening, even when you have young children who take a lot of your time, you need to have routines. Your children are going to live, even though they're going to make fun of you, that when you're doing your routines, like Becca and Gabe used to make fun of me all the time when they were teenagers. And now, of course, they eat natural foods and they do yoga, and it was monkey see, monkey do. I never had to beat them up with my rituals. They just observe me, and now they do similar things. So for you parents, make sure you take good care of yourself, because your children will remember that, even though they cursed you out when they were younger. When they get older, they're going to go, I think my parents were onto something. Healthy rituals are really important.
And doing that 20-minute ritual twice a day, 7 days a week, also serves to kind of ground you, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, by nature, I am a space cadet, dreamer, wanderer kind of person. Without those techniques, I would not be grounded enough to be able to implement my ideas. Now, granted, I hire and work with, or have worked with, volunteers who are very organized people, because it's not my strong suit. My routines keep me grounded. Otherwise, I'd have all these ideas and I'd be frustrated because I wouldn't know how to implement them. So I've learned, and I have mentors who've taught me how to organize, how to administer, how to become efficient. These are learned skills. They're not part of my natural virtuous makeup. So I had to develop these virtues, and it's been a lifesaver for me.
I know you're a musician. Is there a song that you would like to play for us, since this will air on Thanksgiving?
The song that I'm about to tell you about um, is only happening because my son knows how to make it come to life, right? So it's called Be, Do, Have. It's a song I wrote about 15 years ago. Gabe was able to produce it for me and get it out about 6 years ago. And it's a song where I am basically praying to become the man I always wanted to be, and the man that I always wanted to do, the things I wanted to do, and the things that I always wanted to have. It's a prayer. And of course, anybody can identify with it. Like, please let me be, do, and have all the things I've always wanted to be, do, and have. So it's an Afrobeat or Juju Nigerian style rhythm. For many years, I was very close friends with an amazing man who, before he passed away, we lived together. His name is Suru Eke. He used to run the Baba Olatunji is a very well-known drummer here in the North Bay for many years, from
I've heard of
Nigeria.
him.
So Frank, who used to live with me, ran the band for many years. Frank left the band to live with me. So we had our own band for many years, the Rhythm Doctors. So he taught me and my son Gabe how to become very adept at mastering this Juju or Afrobeat style. So the song has got an Afrobeat rhythm. All the instruments are played by Gabe and myself, I think with one exception, which is the guitar solo. So it's a very rewarding song for me, especially now with Lisa Ling. Like, I feel like my song has been answered. Like, I have been given all the things that I wanted to be and do and have. So that's the song that I thought, if you wanted to play some or all of it, it would be most appropriate for Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's just been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
You know, it's just so refreshing. I find you to be so refreshing and uplifting.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I also like to let everybody know, like, everybody can be refreshing. You have to have a way. You cannot do life without a way. You can't make shit up as you go, thinking that it's going to hit or not hit. It's too much anxiety. Find a mentor, find a teacher, or find a number of mentors and teachers that you can integrate their wisdom in a way that's right for you, because it's hard to be happy and refreshing if you're always searching and striving.
And how can people find you?
Thank you.
What website should they go to?
If they want to find out more about the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, it would be ymuw.org. If they want to find out more about my work with families and mentoring sons, it would be challengingteenagesons.com.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate having you on today, and may you have a wonderful Thanksgiving this year, as always.
And you too. And thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to speak to the people here in the North Bay, because I feel like we're one big community here.
We are.